Hello, and thank you for joining. I'm Trevin Martin, the Senior Marketing Manager here at Cygilant. Today's webcast is an introduction to Cygilant's latest service, Unified Vulnerability and Patch Management. Our speaker today is Kevin Landt, Cygilant's Director of Product Management. Kevin's responsible for strategic management of Cygilant's SOC View security operations and analytics platform. With over a decade of experience in engineering, marketing, and product management roles, Kevin's worked with a wide variety of customers across multiple industries to help meet their information security challenges. As a reminder, all attendees are in listen-only mode, so if you do have a question, please use the question or chat functions in your GoToWebinar window, and we'll do our best to answer the questions at the end of the session. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Kevin.
Thanks, Trevin, and thanks everybody for joining. So today's agenda, I'll talk first about some recent exploits that took advantage of missing patches, and I'll try not to hit you over the head with vendor FUD, but I do think it's important to just look at some examples to understand why we're talking about this at all and why it's important. Then we'll go through a few best practices that can help avoid these situations. I'll highlight a few roadblocks that prevent some organizations from sticking to those best practices. And finally, a bit about our new service offering. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Cygilant, we provide security as a service. And what we mean by that is we provide technology solutions, but also our security operations team to go along with that to serve as an extension of your own team and help you get more value out of the technology. And our latest offering is called Unified Vulnerability and Patch Management.
Hey, Kevin, I think you're not sharing your screen yet.
Thank you, Trevin. All right. So first, the first example I want to talk about is WannaCry. I'm sure everyone is somewhat familiar with the WannaCry ransomware. This was all over the news last year. And this is just a quick screenshot of what you would have seen if you were infected by this malware. So it has encrypted your files, and it's asking you to send some Bitcoin to get your files back. So what I really want to do, though, is run through just a quick timeline of what happened. So a hacker group calling themselves the Shadow Brokers managed to get a hold of an exploit kit which allegedly belonged to the US government, one of the intelligence agencies. And one of those exploits was called Eternal Blue, which took advantage of a vulnerability in the Windows SMB protocol. And the Shadow Brokers went out and they publicly released it in April of last year. Luckily for us, Microsoft had already discovered the vulnerability about a month earlier, and they'd already released a patch for it. But unfortunately, many systems still remained unprotected. And so it wasn't too long before the exploits were incorporated into a ransomware attack. And just a little over 30 days later, it was out there and it was spreading fast. This particular malware was attributed to North Korea, and it attacked pretty indiscriminately. At the National Health Service in the UK, up to 70,000 devices were affected, which included computers, MRIs, blood storage refrigerators, all kinds of equipment was affected. So much so that on May 12th, NHS was actually turning away non-critical emergencies and diverting people to other locations. The good thing is that the auto update features built into Windows 10 had already kicked in, and a lot of those machines were up to date on patches. But where the malware really hit hard was with the Windows 7 machines that really got slammed. Here's another example. It took advantage of the exact same vulnerability. So as a reminder, the patch was available in March. At the end of June, someone infiltrated an accounting software company called MeDoc, and this is software that's very widely used in Ukraine. So given the geopolitical situation there, you can kind of guess who the prime suspects are. And then on June 27th, a malicious update went out to all the MEDOC users, and there was this new malware built into that update, and it started spreading rapidly. At first, it looked like it was a variation of the Petya ransomware that was already out there, but security researchers and the victims themselves pretty quickly figured out that this malware was a little different, served a different purpose, and hence the name NotPetya kind of stuck to it. Unlike Petya and WannaCry, NotPetya did not give users a way to recover their data. So it was really just designed solely to wreak havoc. In addition to using Eternal Blue, NotPetya also used two other exploits, one called Eternal Romance, which Microsoft had also patched back in March, as well as a third exploit, which took advantage of two of the operating systems that are end of life, so there weren't patches available. And again, small, medium, and even global companies were affected. Even the radiation monitoring equipment around Chernobyl went down. So it had some real world impacts. As an example, Merck reported in one of their earnings calls, 300 million in damages in Q3 of 2017 was attributable to this malware. And then the Equifax breach, I'm sure everybody's kind of sick of hearing this one, but it is, again, a good example. It fits the same pattern. In March, a vulnerability is announced in Apache Struts. The patch is available the same day. DHS sends alerts out to a bunch of companies, including Equifax. And a proof of concept exploit is available the next day. When that happens, you can expect attacks to start shortly after. And in this case, the initial breach happened in May. Finally, the breach is detected at the end of July. The patch gets rolled out, and we've got a time to patch metric of 146 days. And obviously that was just too long to do any good. And by that point, the damage is done. Here's what happened to the value of Equifax stock. The CIO, the CSO resigned, and the CEO announced his retirement shortly after. The lawsuits are ongoing, so we don't know what the total damages are yet, but obviously pretty big deal to Equifax and to the people who had their data exposed, which is most Americans, unfortunately. So in each of those examples, the vulnerability was known, the patch was already available, and following some of these best practices would probably have put companies at much lower risk. The first thing, you got to inventory all assets and what software is installed. You can't protect what you don't know about. There are a number of different discovery tools that are out there. Some of them are open source. So you really need to make an effort to have a good, solid inventory and know what's on your network. Everybody has limited time and resources, so you need to prioritize based on risk. In order to do that, you need to have a pretty good understanding of the business value of each system. And you also need to understand if it's exposed to the internet or if it's on the same network segment as one of your critical servers, what services are running on them, are any of those risky? As we saw, known vulnerabilities are targeted pretty quickly. Exploits are available right after the vulnerabilities are announced. So you really need to patch fast. PCI DSS requires critical patches to be applied in 30 days. And this is where they came up with the number. 30 days is about how long it took to weaponize the vulnerabilities we saw in our examples. For Equifax, for example, it was a month and a half. WannaCry was spreading within 34 days. So PCI didn't just pull this number out of the air. It's based on what they're seeing in terms of attacks. You should be using dedicated patching tools instead of relying on auto updaters. The Windows 10 auto update, as we saw, helped against WannaCry, but auto updaters can sometimes be disabled or ignored. Sometimes they break down. We've seen that with Google Chrome in the past a couple times after a Windows update goes out. And we've even seen situations where an antivirus product blocks updates to certain products. So we don't want to rely on the auto updaters. You need to patch all of your applications, not just the OS and the browser. That's another area where auto updaters and tools like WSUS are going to fall short. They don't necessarily have the ability to patch all those different applications that are running. And probably most importantly, you need a change management process. Patches should be tested and approved before you roll them out to critical systems. And most of the compliance frameworks these days require a documented process, not just for remediating vulnerabilities, but for applying those patches, and it's got to be fully auditable so you can prove that you're following your process. None of those practices are really groundbreaking, obviously. So why did companies fall victim to those malware attacks? There are smart, hardworking people working there. We don't want to trash the people that are trying to do this. It's just that there's some limitations in the tools that we're using today and some challenges to implementing the right processes. Patch silos. This is one of the first challenges you're going to face. This is just a short list of some software that's running in a typical company. Each one has separate tools for getting notified of updates, for applying updates. Do you know if all the notifications are working properly? Have you installed all the critical patches in the last 30 days? There's no way to know without going to 5 or 10 different places. And you don't have centralized reporting. You can't easily compile metrics that tell you how your team's doing. And you can't easily see if you've missed one. And that's how patches are going to fall through the cracks. There also isn't an easily auditable workflow that's going to show who requested the patch, who tested it, and who approved it. And when the data is in these separate silos, it's really hard to figure out where to prioritize your time, because I can't compare the patches and the vulnerabilities to each other. Prioritizing is another challenge. After you run a vulnerability scan, most tools are going to give you a huge report, 1,000 pages or more. So where do you even start? This is an important question because organizations really need to standardize on a process for ranking vulnerabilities and patches. The chart I have here is from the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report. It shows how many days go by before hackers start exploiting vulnerabilities in different types of products. So you can see with Adobe vulnerabilities, they're being exploited almost immediately. Same with Microsoft. And if you look at overall, all of the vulnerabilities totaled up, you can see that you have a very short window to start remediating these vulnerabilities before you're going to see attacks. And that's why it's important to have a plan and stick to it. So you want to come up with some kind of policy. For example, you might want to say, all critical patches must be applied as soon as possible, not longer than 30 days on any of your critical production servers. You might want to say all patches that are medium or high, or they're for non-critical systems, must be rolled out within 90 days, for example. And whatever you decide, the challenge is going to be making those priority decisions and enforcing the policy. Change control is another challenge. To remediate a vulnerability, there's going to be some kind of change. It could either be a patch or a configuration change, or maybe you're putting some other security control in place to mitigate it. Whatever that is, configuration change or patch, it's got to be tested before you put it into production. And you've got to roll it out during a planned change window so that you're avoiding impact to the business. Many organizations we've talked to struggle with this process. The vulnerability scanning and the patching tools aren't well integrated, so you end up using spreadsheets and you're emailing them around to different system owners, and that makes it really hard to keep track of changes. It makes it hard to verify that the patches were properly installed. It also makes it hard when the auditor shows up because they're going to want evidence that you're sticking to your vulnerability management policies. And then last, tracking and measuring your ability to remediate these vulnerabilities in a timely manner. This is another challenge, and it results from the other roadblocks. So if your vulnerability and your patch data is in different silos, and you don't have a good way to prioritize vulnerabilities, and you don't have a centralized change records, then you're going to have a tough time measuring things like mean time to fix and tracking your progress. Security risk is also getting more and more attention from C-level executives and from the board of directors. So IT teams will increasingly need metrics to demonstrate their risk management plans are being executed. So that's where our new service comes in. We're not going to be a silver bullet, but we've really thought through some of these problems and try to come up with some solutions that'll help. Cygilant Unified Vulnerability and Patch Management. It's a subscription service. It combines people, process, and technology. If you've talked to us before, you know we hammer on those three things all the time. Our team of security engineers is going to help manage your vulnerability scanning solution. We support Rapid7, Qualys, or the Tenable Nessus, and our team will help you manage those products. We're also going to deploy our own patch management solution, which supports patching Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and a big library of third-party applications. It also includes auditable workflow, so you can review, approve, schedule, apply, and validate patches. And what's really unique here is with our SOC View platform, the vulnerability and the patch solutions are being integrated together. So you can quickly assess vulnerabilities and you can deploy the patches in one integrated workflow. Like I said, we emphasize people and process, so you get a dedicated Cygilant service delivery manager who's going to ensure you're getting value, and you've got our global SOC team available to help. And of course, assistance with meeting compliance requirements, so helping you with reporting, helping you gather evidence to show your auditors, whether they're internal or external. So I'll give you a quick overview of how it works, and then we'll go into the product quickly as well. Our team is going to install and configure the solution for you. That's a big value in and of itself. We're going to schedule your vulnerability scans on a schedule that makes sense for you. We're also going to be scanning systems for missing patches. We help prioritize the tasks. We've got some risk calculations that we do that help you prioritize the biggest bang for your buck. We correlate the vulnerabilities with the patches, so you can immediately figure out if there's a patch available and take action on it. We know you're not going to remediate everything. You might want to risk accept something and come back to it later. We've got workflow available so that you can document that and track that and figure out who accepted the risk and on what date and for how long. Or you can go ahead and schedule the patches, and I'll show you how that works as well. We have a separate step for approving the patches, so you can follow good change control processes here. And then the patch will be deployed automatically, and we have full reporting on everything. And again, we do this continuously, so it's not just a point-in-time scan. We're doing it regularly, proactively, to make sure you're secure. Why unified? What's the big deal there? Well, by unifying both the vulnerability management and the patch management, which are typically separate solutions, we're really speeding up that remediation process, making you and your team a lot more efficient. We can also reduce some of the error in that process. Trying to figure out if you have the right patch and whether it fixes this or that vulnerability. It helps you prioritize a little bit better, because now you can see patches from all the different vendors in one system, and you can look at the vulnerability that's aligned with it and figure out, is this really a critical vulnerability for this system? It's all single pane of glass, so you can see it all in one place, which obviously saves you some time and headaches. And again, centralized reporting, so you're not going to different places to try to come up with reports. So I'll jump in here real quick. What I really invite you to do is make an appointment with one of our solutions engineers to see this in more detail. I just want to give you a quick high-level overview of what's in here. But a solutions engineer at Cygilant would be the right person to really talk through your environment and see if it makes sense for you. But in here, I've got all my vulnerabilities that I've imported from my scanner. And I'll come in and take a look at one. I've got all my details. I can sort these by priority. We've got our own custom risk score that takes into account the business value of each of these systems. We've got all the details. In this case, we pulled this from Qualys. Like I said, we also support Rapid7 and Nessus as well. We've got information on the vulnerability, the impact of the vulnerability, how the scanner detected it. And I can do some research here. I can see, okay, this is a CVE 2016-2183 on my system right here. And the great thing is I can go see the patch right from here. So we're looking at the same system. We're looking at the same CVE 2016-2183. Now, obviously, this is a demo machine that we haven't patched at all. Hopefully, yours won't look like this. But you may have one or two patches sitting here, and they're going to be directly applicable to that vulnerability because we've gone ahead and correlated that information already. And right from here, you can go ahead and schedule the patch. You can approve it. And it's all built into the same workflow. We've also integrated this with our ticketing. So you can work with other people in your organization. In this case, I've got a ticket already created for this vulnerability. I can view it here. I can assign this to somebody else in my company if I want. Leave a reply for them. So this helps you facilitate the testing and the verification, all those things that you need to keep track of within your organization. And that's all delivered here. All the reporting is right here in the same system as well. So you've got one place to go, one-stop shop, and your vulnerability and your patching is unified. So some of the benefits of doing that, obviously, protecting your critical assets. We saw at the beginning what the consequences can be if you're not staying right up on top of those patches, the critical ones anyway. It does not take long for an attacker to take advantage of those. We're talking 1 or 2 months before we start seeing attacks. And by really using this platform to put in place a formal process, you can protect yourself from those type of attacks. This also helps you leverage your preferred scanning vendor. So we're not going to tell you have to buy a certain vulnerability scanner. We're not going to tell you have to use ours. We're not going to go out and reinvent the wheel. There's already good ones out there. So if you've already invested in Qualys or Rapid7 or Nessus, we can use the infrastructure you already have in place. Our team will just start to help with it. It greatly increases your efficiency to have everything in one place, one workflow, and one set of reports. And again, compliance, more and more important to have not just some checkboxes, but to really have a continuous process in place. The auditors are going to want to see evidence of the process. So with that, we can open it to questions, and I just want to thank everybody for attending today.
Great, thanks, Kevin. As a reminder, everyone's in listen-only mode, so if you do have questions, you can type them into the questions portion of your GoToWebinar window. And it does look like we have a few questions. The first one is, how do you keep your patching database up to date?
So we have partnered with a company called Avanti, and you may know them from, they own the Shavlik product as well as the Lumention patch link solution. So they're really the biggest patch vendor out there. We've got an agreement with them to use their patch repository. So we're really leveraging a best of breed patch library.
Great. The next question is, can I add this if I'm already a customer?
Yes and no. So this particular service that I was talking about today, the bundled service that we're offering as a new service, is for people that have purchased their own vulnerability scanning licenses. And so our pricing is designed with that in mind. You've already invested in the technology. We're just going to add in patch and layer the service on it. If you are a current customer of our vulnerability management service, the same feature set is available. All you would have to do is add our patch management service separately. And with those two licenses, all of that functionality in SOCView is turned on, and you can go back and forth from the vulnerabilities to the patches like I just demonstrated.
Awesome, thanks, Kevin. The next question is, any idea on the pricing per workstation? Or if you just want to talk about the pricing in general.
Yeah, I can just touch on it. So we license based on the number of IP addresses you've got, because on the vulnerability side, we can scan both internal systems as well as your public-facing IPs. What I would recommend in terms of getting pricing is just reaching out to somebody on our sales side. You can do that through our website. We've got a chat window that makes it really easy. Or if you're already a customer, just ping your service delivery manager, and they'll be able to get you the right info.
Perfect. It looks like we actually have a couple questions about ticketing systems and if it works with third-party ticketing systems or some of those options.
So we don't have two-way integration with those. You can use our platform to generate tickets in those systems, and we could have a solutions engineer talk through that with you. The only thing there is, once we generate the ticket on your side, our team can't follow up on it. It's kind of the ball's in your court at that point, which may be fine, and that's what you want. If you do keep everything in our ticketing system, then our team can follow along and review things with you on your regular calls with your security engineer, and we can kind of work with you to resolve anything that seems to be outstanding.
Awesome. We have one more question. It says, can your security as a service system work as an on-premise system?
So the way it works is we can integrate with on-premise vulnerability scanners. So if you've got a VM system already set up and installed on premises, we can connect remotely and pull that data. SOCView itself is going to reside in our cloud, so we can't fully install it on your site, but you can log into our web-based console and see the vulnerability results from your on-premises server. On the patching side, you can install a local repository on your network and download the patches from us to your local server, and then have all of your workstations get their updates, or all your servers get their updates from that one local server. And if you have mobile users take their laptop off-site, for example, and they can't reach the local server, you can have them connect directly to our cloud to get their updates. So we can make sure systems are getting patched whether they're on-prem or not.
Awesome, thanks, Kevin. It looks like there are no other questions, so this will conclude today's session. Thank you guys all for joining, and thanks again to our speaker, Kevin.
Thanks, everybody.